What is up, Z-Pack? It's your boy Z-Dog MD. I am coming live and direct with a new mini-series that are just quick little bites about a show we did previously or something in the news that I just want to get out there quick and fast and dirty. Let me know if this works for you guys. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Mayo Clinic piece that we did the other day about the story that CNN ran that had to do with the mother and the 18-year-old daughter who'd had a brain aneurysm, who was admitted to Mayo, got neurosurgery, they saved her life, then she went to rehab, and that's when the drama began. The family said that they were marginalized, that the staff and the hospital were trying to keep her against her will and against the family's wishes, and they wanted to transfer, but they wouldn't let them transfer, so the family actually broke them out, and it was this front page of CNN, made national news. We talked about it in terms of, well, we don't really know Mayo's side of the story, and these sort of things don't typically happen without a reason. And if you're going to accuse somebody of medical kidnapping, then we'd love to hear what's actually going on the inside of this. But whatever the case is, it wasn't handled so well because it got to a point now where it's national news. So should there have been an ethics consult? Should there have been some other intervention? Well, since the story came out and all the press is generated, Mayo kind of had had the unprecedented sort of action of having to actually respond with more details about the patient case. And apparently the HIPAA thing wasn't really so much a consideration. It was more about professionalism, and the clinic stated that they had concern about the safety and well-being of the patient, who at the time was 18 years old, Alyssa, and the mother, Amber. So what ended up coming out is, and Minnesota Public Radio did its own investigation and published a piece about this as well. Well, it turns out it was more complicated than just the hospital kidnapped this patient and tried to get a conservator for her and take power away from the parents. Turns out there were concerns that the mother was abusive emotionally and physically, not just to the patient, but to other family members. There were public records of this in the past with her other children, and there were concerns that Mayo stated that the patient was not only disruptive to the care of her daughter in the hospital, but may have been physically threatening and verbally threatening to staff. Now, you guys know where I stand on that. There is a zero tolerance for physical and verbal threats to healthcare professionals. So if it's true, what we have is, again, a more complicated and nuanced case than the press will report. So the question I have is, can you trust a damn thing that the press tells us? Any press. And I'm not talking politics here. Is it Fox News? Is it CNN? Is it MSNBC? Is it the Drudge Report? I don't care about that. I can tell you from personal experience and from seeing this long enough that if the press is reporting about a medical situation like this, you will never hear the depth of both sides in a balanced way. You just won't. Because, first of all, the hospitals and the medical side tend to be much more reserved in what they say. They're always worried about legal action, and they're also actually concerned about the patient, about privacy, and about professional ethics. And if they are trying to hide something, obviously they're not going to say something either. So you're never going to get a nuanced answer. When CNN runs a piece like this, patient escapes from Mayo Clinic, that headline is clickbait. That's how they get clicks and views. And in the brave new world of journalism, this is how you make money when you're competing against multiple journalistic outlets. In the old days, I was talking to Tom Heineber about this, and his dad is a lawyer, a copyright and IP lawyer for a major newspaper, and has done that for most of his career. And he says, you know, kind of the impression is, as these journalistic enterprises like big newspapers and the few networks went from being kind of monopolies in their community where it was just them, they really, the only way they could actually do well is by being fair and balanced, because they were kind of responsible to everyone in the community. There was nobody else there, and it didn't really benefit them to be as sensationalist. Now, though, with the total change in how journalism is done, there's all these competitors trying to get limited attention span on the internet and on multiple cable outlets. Sensationalist. Of all, they're very polarized, so some are liberal, some are conservative. And second of all, it is a much more yellow journal, I mean, a much more muckrakey kind of sensationalist thing. So stories that aren't necessarily, they may, you know, according to Mayo, they actually gave their side, but CNN chose not to talk about it. But again, it's hard to know what's really going on. But the truth is, you are not. If you look at a news article, you need to be skeptical on every level. Look at it as one side, and then try to figure out how can you learn about the other side, or what the other side might be, or what you might be missing. That's what we try to do on the show as well. Instead of reacting to every single news article with outrage, we have to go, well, okay, so what could actually be going on? What are the different pros and cons? Is there any inside knowledge I have from practitioners on the back end messaging me? In the Mayo circumstance, it's interesting because nobody directly involved in her care has messaged me, which shows a high level of professionalism, because they don't want to violate HIPAA and they don't want to violate their hospital policies and that sort of thing. But people working at Mayo that are not involved in this case have said they are very proud to work there. They feel that there's very high levels of integrity, and they think that if this family was reacted to in this way, it must have been a serious sort of affair. In other words, whatever allegations are flying back and forth now, there may be there was actual serious concern. So all that being said, my goal here is to make sure that we try to step back for a second whenever this stuff happens and think. The same thing went with the Baltimore patient dumping case, and people get very emotional about this stuff, but let's detach for a second. It is not in our best interest to start throwing stuff and to jump to conclusions. That's not how positive change happens. That's not how actually justice gets done if this patient was actually held hostage and medically kidnapped and all the things the family said, as opposed to mother's abusive, mother is under the influence of drugs, which is the opposite allegation now. And the question is, where's the truth? We won't be able to know, but it's good to be able to weigh all those things before we jump and fly off the handle and hit share on Facebook and get pissed. Because that's our shitty first draft, and we're better than that, or we should try to be. I'm not always better than that. I fall into the trap myself. But it's something that we should strive to do, particularly as part of this tribe. Last thing I want to say is there's a new button, by the way, called Become a Supporter. If you click that, $4.99 a month, what I'm doing for those subscribers, I call them the Super PAC, is they're getting one-on-one time with me through live episodes, through early releases of content, through special posts that are for people who just want to go deeper and want to have these conversations. And that $4.99 a month actually goes a long way towards paying a lot of our bills. So it helps support us, and in return, we will spend more time giving you very deep content that maybe we can't do publicly. Maybe it's stuff I'm not allowed to say publicly. Maybe it's the results of a meeting that I had that nobody else knows about. And you can find out and have the conversation with me, and then I can get feedback from you as to what you think we should do on a more public level to improve education, to keep the movement to build Health 3.0 going. So if that's something you want to do, definitely click on. If you want to support the show through Patreon, we have options there too, where you can get free merch and merch coupons. You can get that through the Facebook thing too. But it's a beta thing. Facebook was cool enough to let us try it as a handful of creators that get to try this, because they think we fooled them into thinking we're doing good in the world, and we're using their platform to advance better understanding, better cooperation, and people getting along better, as opposed to yelling, screaming, and hurling feces, which I'm also quite good at. All right, guys, I love you. We out. Not sure who I'm pointing at.